Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, joined always by my friend Jay,
Hello.
and I will make a solemn promise for this episode in that I won't try to speak any Italian or make any stupid things, grazie or any of that crap. I'm not going to do any of that, I promise. As we do an Italian film in our Masters of Film series by Italian master Federico Fellini, and the film in question will be Fellini's, with his name in the title, Casanova, about the 18th century historical figure. Fellini, interesting guy, born in 1920, so he lived in Italy during all that fascist stuff, and he had various jobs during that point. At one point, he was a journalist, he was a cartoonist. He was always going against the grain, which is pretty cool. And he did eventually, when he became a filmmaker just at the end of the 40s, he probably would have been considered part of the neorealist movement of the time, which was happening in the later 40s in Italy. Probably the biggest film and the most known film of that would be Bicycle Thieves, or is it, sometimes it's called Bicycle Thieves, sometimes it's called The Bicycle Thief, I don't know. But anyway, that Italian film from, I think, in 1948, which is often listed amongst the greatest films of all time. But as he went on, by the time he was out of the 50s, he was sort of broken away from the neo-realist movement and found his own voice, which was more or less kind of more sort of magic realism stuff and a slight surrealism. We're not talking heavy surrealism, but at least a little bit. Basically, he just sort of got more creative, and a lot of his movies were kind of like, what is going on type things happening. But always usually with a tinge of humor to them and stuff too. As we said when we did this series, for the most part, we tried not to do when we picked a filmmaker their most obvious or famous movie. In Fellini's case, it's probably a tie between La Dolce Vita, which was the movie that more or less put him on the map, which came out in the early 50s, and also is where we get the term paparazzi that comes from that movie. And then a couple years later, 8½, which again is one of those movies that is usually on the list of best films of all time. I thought about doing 8½, even though it is on the nose, just because I figure our audience might be less familiar with Fellini. But at the end, I just thought it was in too many ways too similar to what we just did in Day for Night. I mean, they're very different films, but I thought they had too many sort of similarities and theme-wise and stuff like that. So I figured, might as well do something different. And Jay and I kind of almost sort of haphazardly arrived at Fellini's Casanova, which is further in his career. This would be the late 70s. So by now he's really broken away and forged his own style of magic realism and stuff like that. And as we said, just sort of weirdness. But still, there is a core structure to the way his style works throughout the movies. A lot of it has to do with mise en scene, just the way things are set up and stuff. And one thing I can say about this movie, to its benefit, which I think is good, is that it has a lot of really interesting sets and set pieces. There's a lot of scenes that must have been very complicated to film, really. In that, usually when you think about complicated films, you usually think about like films that have a lot of effects going on or stunts and stuff like that. But this is different. This is just a lot of other stuff, just a lot of things with a lot of actors, a lot of things in the background, a lot of things in the foreground, a lot of overlapping dialogue and stuff. So, you would have to be a pretty deft director to handle the complexity of some of these scenes without them, becoming just incomprehensible.
Well, on a positive note about the film, I do think that's the strongest part is the costume design and the
right. I think it won an Oscar for costume design.
I believe it did.
It was at least nominated for best foreign language too.
Giuseppe Rotuno was the cinematographer.
Nice.
Oh wait, no, that wasn't the set designer, was it? That's not who won the Oscar.
Cinematographer Giuseppe Rotuno. Costume design. Danilo Donati.
That's right.
Is the costume person. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. So this is And there's been other movies, of course, too. Movies based on the life of 18th century adventurer. What's his first name? I always forget his first name.
Giacomo.
Yeah, Giacomo. Giacomo Casanova. Right. So, as Jay and I were saying before the show, the first thing that really strikes you is if you know anything about Casanova. I mean, I don't know a lot. I mean, most people just know almost as a term. It usually means like a womanizer or a great lover or something like that. But just, I'm not going to get too into it. But just for clarity's sake, he was a real person that lived in the 18th century, born in the Venice, whatever it was called. Back before Italy came together the way it was. The Republic of Venice, that's what it was called. The Republic of Venice, which was way up in northern Italy. That actually existed for centuries. But anyway, yeah, so he was a real guy, and he did write down his like memoirs, which became very popular, chronicling the adventures of his life. And he was an adventurer in really true sense of the word. He moved all around Europe, meeting all sorts of people and people in very high places and stuff. And he was a jack of all trades in many ways, and he studied medicine, he studied law, philosophy, chemistry. He was very intelligent and interested in a wide variety of subjects. But anyway, so the first thing that strikes you about this movie is that Fellini didn't seem to see it that way, and did not seem to have much respect for him. It almost seems like his whole purpose in making this movie was to show how he saw Casanova, which was sort of like an empty-headed I don't know, poser kind of guy that just went around, having meaningless affairs and just doing whatever he could to ingratiate himself and suck up to like rich people around him. And in this depiction, they're mostly not even that interested in his other talents, even though they have been talking about it. So it's the first thing that strikes you about this movie once it's over, is that it almost seems like a hatchet job on Casanova's character, because he doesn't come across well at all in the movie. He seems like kind of like a buffoon. And as for being a polymath or being well versed in all these subjects, the way he's presented here is more like, oh well, he thinks he is. It's more like he thinks of himself as an intellectual, but he's really not, and nobody takes him seriously. Again, this goes against historical evidence where he was taken seriously by quite a few people, and a lot of people had a lot of respect and a lot of good things to say about him. Probably the other thing that strikes you about this movie is the fact that the lead role is by Canadian actor Donald Sutherland, which seems like a super bizarre choice. I know that Robert Redford was somebody the studio had suggested to Fellini, and he turned that down. Jack Nicholson was mentioned, and then some various other actually Italian actors.
And this was before Dino De Laurentiis dropped out, right?
Right.
That was apparently a sticking point between Fellini and...
De Laurentiis, he's the one that really wanted Redford, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I can see Robert Redford in that role either.
No, it's not really the type of acting I could just see a straight shooter like Redford doing, Because the other thing about this movie, when we talk about like hyperrealism or magic realism stuff, it extends to the acting to a certain extent too, and that the acting is kind of over the top and flowery. Casanova, of course, is the most over the top. He's very over dramatic, and he's prone to making big stupid speeches and always inflamed by his passions and blah blah blah. But a lot of the other actors do very similar things too. So yeah, it's hard to picture Redford, who's done so many roles in his life, but he's never really done a role like that where he would be in like weird costumes and emoting in that way. I mean, one thing you can give Sutherland is that he takes to it quite well.
Yeah.
Even though, again, I don't think he's what most people picture when they picture Casanova. It's true that Casanova was known for having kind of a hooked nose. And the thing is that for this role, Sutherland wore like a prosthetic nose and also something on his chin too. But even if you take those away, Sutherland's not a handsome man really by any classical stretch of the imagination. And I don't know. And he just mostly looks ridiculous throughout the movie. Yeah. I mean, some of it's just the weird costumes and stuff, but a lot of it is just Sutherland himself.
His hairline, I mean, it's like halfway, it's really odd, the whole look. I don't know what they were going for there, but
I mean, it is true that you had a lot of these aristocrats had very over the top and weird, clothes that they wore and stuff. It's funny, a while back when we did our other 18th century period piece, if you want to call it that, Barry Lyndon, I said one of the good things about Barry Lyndon is that it sort of highlights how goddamn weird European society was at the time. This movie does that up to 11, into a point where I think it reaches to a point where it's actually not even realistic anymore. I think they go overboard a little bit. But it is true, a lot of the stuff that you see, that it is true that, as we said, especially when you have some of these aristocrats and stuff like that, you have rich people with nothing to do with their time and money, and they'll have a whole bunch of followers and stuff, and then they'll just do like weird, bizarre, over-the-top, extravagant things to impress and amuse each other. And that's what you see a lot of in this movie. It's usually him going from court to court, trying to get in good with, some person of high rank or high social standing. And then usually you have some sort of big lobby or whatever, where all the people that are part of the entourage and stuff are entertained, and various things happen. And Casanova tries to get himself in the middle of these things, which I think is true, historically true, but I don't think it's portrayed historically accurate the way that they have him doing it. And again, they have him a lot as sort of a, I don't know, like a big, I don't know, philanderer, poser that, again, is just trying to suck up to these people, and who's trying to get them to take him seriously as an intellectual, but most of them don't. And they like him more for like his sexual prowess and stuff, which even that is mocked in this movie.
Yeah.
Like the sex scenes in this movie are ridiculous. They are not erotic. And if I can invoke a stereotype, I don't think people too many mind. It's that the Italians know a thing or two about eroticism. So It's not like Fellini doesn't know. This is a deliberate choice by Fellini to make all the sex look ridiculous, and at the heart of it all, to make Casanova look the most ridiculous. He's known for being such a great lover and stuff, even if he wasn't the best looking guy and stuff, and he would captivate women and stuff. And yet in this, he's just some idiot that basically has one move, which is just to ridiculously pump away in the missionary position. While like sweating and looking like he's going to pass out. Like that's just all he does in like every single time. And even in certain scenes, they show that his lover isn't even really that thrilled or satisfied by his efforts and stuff, which again I think runs contrary to what history would tell you, because again I think he didn't get his reputation for nothing. He obviously was a pretty good lover, generous, creative. Anyway, all those things you think of were good lover, like generous, creative things. Like the only thing given this is like, yeah, maybe he had stamina. There's even a contest of stamina that happens in this movie.
Yeah, even that was beyond ridiculous.
Beyond ridiculous. And again, not well at all simulated sex. So obviously whenever you're doing a real movie, not a porno, not a pornographic movie, you can't have real sex. You can't have actual penetration. So what we see in movies is called simulated sex, which I mean, some of it, of course, is real, like fondling of body parts and stuff can be real enough. But once you get into, intercourse and stuff, they can't show it. But some movies, they do at least a pretty decent job of making it seem like this movie doesn't even do that. I mean, you have him like rolling off women and they're both still wearing like pants and stuff. So
yeah, he's completely clothed during most of the sex scenes.
Yeah. Didn't you just love his ridiculous undershirt that he wore all the time?
That's what it's like a tank top, like a halter top or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
He looked like he should have, like, so you have like this weird gangly Donald Sutherland with like makeup on and a wig and a long nose and stuff, and then he's wearing like a shirt that looks like a girl in a music video from like 1983 would wear.
It's like some Spice Girls attire.
It's so bizarre in so many ways. And again, the way they mock him, because pretty much every time he's doing a lovemaking scene, that weird music starts coming in. I can't describe it, but if you see it again, it's not erotic, it's not romantic, it's just sort of goofy, funny music. It's like, oh, here he goes again, the fool. And then there's that weird mechanical bird that's in some of the scenes for that too, that goes up and down, which I have no idea what that meant, except again, just highlighting the absurdity of it all.
So it's like the one thing he's got, like, Casanova is it's like a word that means like good lover, right? I mean, so like the one thing that he had, like Fellini takes away from him. Yeah.
And I mean, supposedly he had lots of other things too, as we said.
Right.
From all accounts, he was probably an intellectual who could, converse at great length and in detail about a lot of subjects and stuff. And at various times in his life, even if he was technically scamming people, like he pulled it off in such a way that people were satisfied with it. In one way or another, the man was a lawyer, a clergyman, a military officer, a violinist, a pimp, a gourmand, a dancer, a businessman, diplomat, spy, politician, medic, mathematician, social philosopher, Kabbalist, playwright, and of course, writer. He did all those things and was paid for all those things at various points in his life. So even if you want to say he was posing, he got paid, which makes you a professional. And yeah, so this movie really seems to just sort of throw that out the window or make it seem like it was all in his head or something. Again, I don't know why Fellini had such a problem with it. Again, it seems like Fellini's main problem was he wanted to show that while this man was really known for being a great lover and stuff like that, he didn't have any actual love in himself. That all of his affairs and stuff like that didn't actually mean anything. They were all empty and meaningless because they were all just about carnal pleasures and sex, but not about actual deep relationships and love and stuff like that. And that might be true and fair, but it doesn't actually, it still doesn't wipe out his other accomplishments and stuff, but for Fellini it does. So as we said, so he's got like nothing going for him in this except for maybe the sex, but and Fellini even finds a way to make that like ridiculous and empty. So this is a movie that's almost, even though this does have various accounts that come from his actual life, the way the movie is shown to us, it's more like kind of a loose collection of episodes rather than sort of a, really strong ongoing narrative. I mean, it does follow in a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Linear?
Yeah, in a linear fashion, thanks. It does, and I mean, it does have a beginning and end and stuff like that. But in some ways, it's kind of haphazard the way we just sort of go from one place and this, like he goes here and this happens, he goes there, that kind of thing.
That seems like what it is. It's just like he goes, to this set piece and crazy shit happens. He has a sex scene. He goes over here and it's a completely different place, different country, and the same thing. It's really odd. The whole thing's really odd to me.
Mm-hmm. But as we said, like actual things from his life are shown in the movie. For instance, his imprisonment and escape from prison, that really did happen. He was basically imprisoned for being indecent and having forbidden books in his library and shit like that. And he did really escape. There's a really great scene where he actually 100%, and it is true in real life, he was being a fraud, where he was like duping some woman that thought he could do like some sort of black magic, some sort of ritual that would turn her to a man. She wanted to be a man for some reason. And that really did happen, and kind of a lot like the way it is shown in the movie, where like he has to like make love to her, but has a younger woman in the room with him so that he can actually be aroused and stuff. While the movie paints him as just a big old, con artist and fraud that just went around trying to dupe people and stuff at every turn, the truth is he did do a little of that, but that wasn't his whole thing. And his philosophy was more like, well, he only did it to people he thought were dumb enough and gullible enough to fall for it, and they deserved it. But he wasn't like a fraud when it came to everything. But the movie makes it seem like he was. Again, anytime he wants to like tell people about philosophy or medicine or whatever subject he was, like they don't buy it and they don't care. But yeah, the costumes are really something, and over the top and stuff. There's this scene early in the movie where he's having at one of the more normal scenes where he's just at a dinner. He's at a dinner at some court, and he's they're at the long table and everybody's dressed in their finery. I think he's wearing his stupidest costume, where he's wearing some sort of weird pink thing. It's all I remember is this pink. It's hideous. He looks very feminine and ridiculous. And everybody's eating, and they're all wearing sort of over-the-top things, almost as grotesque as his. And it reminds me of a scene from one of my favorite movies, and that is Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. There's a scene in that movie where the evil characters, the horrible creatures, the Skeksis, which are these awful bird reptilian things, are having a dinner just like that. And I swear they're wearing clothes that look exactly like the clothes that they're wearing in that scene. And it's even all, of course, more horrible because the whole point is the Skeksis are awful, disgusting. And the whole point of the scene is to really highlight it. So they're eating and they're slurping and they're getting stuff and they're belching and stuff. And it just reminds me so much of that scene. I laughed out loud when I saw it because all I could think, it's like they're just like the Skeksis. And especially Sutherland himself. He looked just like one of the Skeksis in their ridiculous, over-the-top finery, court clothes or whatever, having this really gaudy meal. It's really funny. So if you haven't seen The Dark Crystal, there's a million great reasons to see The Dark Crystal. It's one of my favorite movies. I love it, but it's a really interesting compare and contrast. Like it struck me as so similar. I almost wondered if that's what Jim Henson was going for with the scene. Maybe not, but I don't know. People have to get back to me on that because like it's so similar. It's ridiculous.
Man, how funny would that be?
Yeah, that he actually was influenced by that.
What year was The Dark Crystal?
The Dark Crystal was 82, but it took several years to make. So it was after this movie.
Very well could have been. I mean, this was, what, 76?
Yeah. I think The Dark Crystal went from like 78 to 82. It took them a long time to make that movie. But yeah, I'm trying to remember where he was at the time. I can't remember, but yeah. Oh, it's part of the first place. It's the court of the first place where he's in Venice. The very first scene we get is him rowing out to one of Venice's islands to have a sexual encounter with a woman dressed as a nun, and it really sets the tone for the movie right away because it's bizarre and ridiculous and not sexy. And then you find out it's not just him having sex with this woman, but there's some bizarre, weird aristocrat who's behind the wall watching the whole thing. He's paid him to put on the performance because at this point, Casanova has this reputation as this lover and stuff, and he wants to see him in action. And then you get to the crux of what's going on in this movie, although I don't think it was in real life, whereas, okay, now the sex is over, and you've seen what I can do, but I want you to take me seriously as an intellectual. I want you to listen to me talk about these things and stuff. And over again, the people aren't interested in that. They just like him more as like a curiosity and a guy that, is a good lover and that kind of thing. He wanted to talk, in particular at that time, he wanted to talk about his research in alchemy. And, the guy just didn't care, had no interest. And it's shortly after that, it's early on in the movie, shortly after that where we see he gets arrested and imprisoned by what was known at the time as the High Court, where it's just sort of his debauchery, which is kind of funny when you think about it, in that he lived in a society that completely encouraged all his stuff, as we just saw. But that was a real thing that happened to Casanova at the time. And so then so at first you think that, like, a lot of the movie is going to be a flashback. That's kind of a weird thing, because then while he's in prison, he has a flashback and we get some scenes, but then we jump back to the present and then he escapes and then the movie just moves forward again. It's kind of an odd little digression. I mean, I guess it doesn't mess things up, I guess. I mean, it's okay. But yeah, while he's in there, he remembers when he's having an affair with a seamstress. And it's kind of funny because she's this woman that keeps having fainting spells. And the doctor's idea of fixing fainting spells is bloodletting, which is like, isn't like the worst thing you can do to somebody who faints?
They did that for everything.
I know, 18th century medicine. Bleed them. There's something wrong with the blood. Get the blood out. Yeah, there was a lot of belief back then that, like, if something was wrong with you, you had, like, tainted blood, something wrong with the blood. So you need to get that blood out. And the only thing was, this predates transfusions. So even if you had the idea of getting out bad blood, there was no good blood to replace it with. These people just had to, like, be bled and then lie. So yeah, so he's got the various seamstresses who are coming on to him and stuff, but he has eyes for this one who, I don't know who played her, but they did a good job of casting a woman that looks like she would faint all the time. She looked very sickly, and her eyes look huge in the hollow of her head and stuff, and she's always fainting and stuff. And yeah, when he, like, has sex with her, again, it's not very, it's not very sexy. And then anyway, he's back in prison. He managed to escape through the roof and goes off to Paris. And that's where you get the first thing of him using his what's the word I want to say?
The surrealist stuff.
No, like Casanova's, like, skills in, like, sorcery or black magic or whatever, right? Because then you have this older woman that wants him to, she's actually interested in his knowledge of alchemy, and she thinks that he can transform her soul into the soul of a man if they have some sort of ritualistic intercourse. And it's in that scene too, where also there's a younger redheaded woman with a nice ass that he's really into. So he gets her to come in and be part of it, so that at least he can get fully aroused. So he's watching her while he's doing the older woman and stuff. Meanwhile, the woman completely thinks that this is like a legit thing that's going to transform her soul. Although I have no idea how she thinks she's going to have that. It's pretty funny. Eventually, she does sort of realize it doesn't work, and he moves on to the next thing. But it's some funny stuff.
Yeah. This is, I think, one of the only movies that we've done on this show that was really hard for me to get through. I'll be honest with you. It was a tough watch.
I mean, as I said, it doesn't have like a good narrative in that. It doesn't have like any sort of real connection or build up. It just seems like just sort of a loose collection of episodes that have a starting point and stopping point more so than like a really cohesive story. There's not like plot threads or something there. It's like, oh, I want to see if this is going to pay off. So that is one of the reasons why it is a harder thing to get through. And, I didn't watch it all at once either. And I actually watched not quite half, because it's over 2.5 hours, but I watched about roughly the first hour in French and then switched over to an English dub because I was having trouble because, I don't know, the language they use is just, they use a lot of big words and flowery stuff, which is a little tough for me to do in French and stuff, so I switched over. And I enjoyed it more in English anyway because I liked hearing Donald Sutherland's voice. I liked hearing Donald Sutherland and his weird professions and stuff, professing his love and passion for things or stuff, or how interested he is in some subject, or how much he respects some aristocrat or person. He's always, really over the top and flowery, which I found pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem. The whole thing comes off as funny. And, I mean, I know it's somewhat intentional, but it just plays as weird to me. It's like, this reminds me of the guy that did El Topo and Holy Mountain. His name's escaping me.
Jodorowsky.
Yeah, Jodorowsky. It seems like one of his films, but it's even, not even as easy to follow as that. It's like an art film, but it's just nothing going on.
Yeah, it's less interesting. It's not as interesting as the Jodorowsky films, which always gave you something sort of interesting to follow, even if you didn't quite understand it. Whereas this, you pretty much understand it, but I don't know how much of a payoff there is. Besides, like we said, it does make its point about some things, but then it kind of does it over and over again. I have to say, it probably gets to its weirdest in the middle, because the next place he goes is the court of the guy Dubois, who's the Hunchback. And I have to say, where did they find that fucking weirdo? And before people think I'm saying something about hunchbacks, no, this guy wasn't, in real life, he wasn't a hunchback. So I don't mean, they found some hunchback freak. I mean, they found an actor to play a hunchback who was a total freak. This guy, like, he was so scary looking, and he'd always, like, he had wild eyes, and he'd lick his lips. He'd be like, his tongue would be like, he's just a grotesque, terrible person. And it really is the absolute epitome of, debauchery and weirdness and, 18th century European society and how weird it would get. So it's like, here's this depraved hunchback and his attempt to entertain his bunch of weird friends. And he does like this weird sort of like one-act homosexual play thing with some guy. So it's funny. So half the court are amused by it, and half of them are repulsed. it's really something. I would say if you're gonna see any of the movie, just see that scene. That scene's totally worth seeing because it's so freaking weird and over the top and stuff.
And I thought the dwarves and the giantess was pretty weird also.
Yeah, there's a
even the final scene of the movie, the final deal with the doll is crazy.
The thing with the giantess is kind of cool, too, because it's the one scene that actually shows that while we've seen one end of society, as we said, how crazy and over-the-top things can be, it shows the other end of society and how it's kind of the same thing. On the one hand, you have, like, we have, like, these rich people that have too much time, money, and don't know what to do with themselves, so they have these weird extravagances and stuff, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, you have people that don't have enough money, and they seek out kind of the same sort of entertainment. And that's what you have with this circus where they have the giantess. And that's sort of the low moment for Casanova, because at this point he'd been in London and he'd been robbed by two women, which really insulted and upset his delicate sensibilities, because he was like, "Oh, you give a bad name to women everywhere." It's like, and he almost wants to kill himself. He feels so betrayed and off. Anyway, and then he winds up witnessing this traveling circus that has, the usual freak shows and stuff, and then they have this giantess, this giant woman who's arm wrestling various people, and he says he'll arm wrestle her, and of course. But then later he does a really weird thing in that he pays like one of the circus people money to let him spy on her taking a bath with the dwarves. Oh my god, it's hilarious. So yeah, that's right up there for weirdness too. I just couldn't get over that guy playing the Hunchback, because I was just like, that's a fantastic actor. Because like if he's just like a normal person, bravo. Because I totally believed in this like just absolutely out of his mind Hunchback with with a weird inflated sense of his artistic abilities and stuff like that. It's so funny. As I said, he's really being serious putting on this play, and like again, some of them are like, yeah, this is weird, I'm into that, where others are just like, what is this? Because you get the idea, these are people that are used to this kind of stuff, but like he's gone so far that they are weirded out by it. And I can get it too, like part of again, the upper society being like, yeah, he's this sort of crazy hunchback and he's not good to look at and stuff, but he's rich and he's an aristocrat and stuff, so they all, smile at him. I don't know. I was really amused by it. But as you said, you could just, if you're going to pick weirdest, it is pretty hard. All you can really agree on is like, yeah, there's weirdness all over the place, as this movie loves to highlight. But it's true that, like, in real life, one of the reasons he could, like, dupe the socialites with his supposed powers of occultism was just because he had a good mathematical mind and was good at numerology, and he had a good memory and stuff, and that was really all it took to make them think that he was doing, like, magical things and stuff. So he really thought that he was justified in conning these people. And again, he made a lot of money. He traveled in high circles and was always managing, to meet interesting and wealthy and influential people, and also beautiful women that he could seduce. And this movie is sort of like a funhouse mirror distortion of that. And like, yeah, that's what's going on. But again, it seems to like really be like a character assassination, like showing him just sort of as an empty-headed wannabe charlatan rather than anybody with any actual legit intellectuality or even real value and stuff. And as we said, his main attribute being such a great lover, they even sort of mock that in this movie, and like that they just make him look ridiculous all the time, and they show that if that's a great lover, it's not really that impressive.
Well, in the contest, he has a contest with whoever this other guy is.
It's the guys, whoever the aristocrat is. It's his coachman. So he's low-born. He's some low-born guy. He's just a coachman. Okay. But he's a young, good-looking guy, and he's fairly virile, as it seems. So then, they decide to make a contest out of it, right for the whole court to watch, to see. It's kind of funny, though, because it has nothing to do with the women. It's for the men themselves.
Yeah. Well, he got to choose who his partner was. So.
Yeah.
He's like, you over there.
Yeah, and she's like completely like not thrilled by the whole thing. Like she doesn't want to do it, and then through his whole like she's never that interested. Whereas the other woman, the older woman that goes with the coachman, she's enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah,
she's riding around. And what's funny is when Casanova wins or whatever, when the other guy I guess just can't go anymore, she's insatiable. She gets on top of him and starts trying to like ride him and stuff because she wants to keep going. It's like, wow, you should have been like, you got the wrong partner then, obviously. Right. Which is pretty funny.
Well, I think she wanted Casanova to pick her.
Yeah, she did, and then he sort of insulted her by picking a younger, prettier woman. So that's why she's like, "I'll make sure you win." But the other guy, he gave out, and yeah, it's sort of funny. So they're all congratulating Casanova, and nobody's watching her anymore. But she gets on top of the guy who's trying to will him to keep going. It's pretty funny.
Well, the whole time Casanova was just doing his, like you were saying, his missionary.
Yeah.
And he's just going, it's pretty awful to watch, really.
I know, with a horrible look on his face, sweat running down his face. And I realize it is true that it's an interesting inversion, right? Because in movies, 90% of the time, the whole point of sex in movies is to make it like even better than real life. Like it's two really attractive people, and you know the guy has great staying power. There's great creativity. They use lots of positions. You know, everything that you want to live up to. And the truth is, in real life, I mean, most of the sex goes on in real life is not attractive people, and it's not always people that are good at it. So in some ways, this movie's kind of highlighting that. It's like, here's what sex is like for most of the world. You know, it's just ugly people bumping uglies.
Yeah.
You know, and they kind of highlight that with this.
And the female not enjoying it at all.
Yeah, the female not enjoying it at all. It's just more or less they're yeah, well, this guy pumps away and grunts and whatever. So in that way, I guess it's sort of realistic, although again, it seems like the wrong time to do it, because if anybody wasn't like that, it was supposedly Casanova. But Fellini, for whatever reason, had his mind made up that this is how he wanted to portray him. Again, it seems like a bit much, but if that's what he wanted to do, obviously he's free to do it. People can interpret historical figures however they want, I guess, and some.
Sure.
You know, I'm not gonna come down on the movie for like not being historically accurate, because that's really the point. And sometimes when you change things around and stuff, you know, it does make for an enjoyable movie. Like Amadeus. Amadeus is not very historically accurate. It changes quite a few things about Mozart's life, but it makes a very interesting movie.
Yeah, I just don't understand why. It just,
it's kind of like demystifying Casanova. It's taking out the stuff that made him special and reducing him to, again, kind of a fool and a charlatan who's not even that good at what he's supposed to be good at. I don't know. Seems unfortunate. I don't really know why it was a big deal to Fellini. Because at first you think, okay, Fellini, he's Italian. Casanova be a character that would mean something to him as an Italian, but then it's just like, yeah, it's a character I want to tear down.
Yeah, and you were saying that he had contacted Casanova in a seance, and
yeah, he claimed that he contacted. He gave him his permission. So yeah, to switch gears from Casanova to Fellini himself led a very interesting life. You know, he lived through the time of the fascists, working as a journalist, a cartoonist. Later, when he got into movies, first he was a scriptwriter. He wrote scripts for some of those neorealists that were active in the later 40s and 50s. Then he starts making films of his own, and he actually himself had many affairs. You know, so it seems kind of hypocritical if he's going to pick on Casanova for being empty or something, or superficial for having affairs, because it's well documented that Fellini had quite a few affairs himself. That I don't think were always about love. And stuff like that. And then, like, yeah, later in life, he surrounded himself with a lot of clairvoyants and mystics. He got big into the works of Carl Jung and stuff. So it's kind of interesting on that point that Fellini in real life took some of this stuff seriously, where he's kind of making fun of Casanova for taking advantage of people that were kind of his equivalent back in the day. In that, yes, the mysterious art of alchemy and how it could relate to the occult, that was just sort of a popular thing back then. A lot of, you know, people didn't really know, and a lot of rich people, again, that had time on their hands, got into it because it was mysterious and interesting to them, and, you know, the science wasn't where it is now, so they believed in a lot of that stuff. Didn't actually make them stupid. It was kind of just what was known at the time. So now you could say, like, Fellini's kind of the same thing, except that Fellini's even less enlightened because he lived in a more enlightened time, and yet he's all interested in mystics and mysticism and stuff like that. So he himself had a very interesting life, no, even beyond being, you know, an acclaimed filmmaker. So it's an interesting character. He lived into the 90s, and he made films right up to 1990 was the last one he made. I don't really know much about he made a handful of films in the 80s, and I don't really know much. But I mean, his heyday was really the 50s and 60s. This is kind of after that. Although it's not like this is considered a bad movie, but yeah, I'm not surprised that it isn't as good as, say, some of those others. And I might even just watch La Dolce Vita the next few days anyway, just to satisfy myself, because it's a really good movie.
Yeah, I've never seen La Strada, so I need to check that one out also. Yeah. So you were saying 50s and 60s were his heyday, but then after that is when you're saying he like kind of left that new wave style.
Well, it was more 60s that he left it.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, like eight and a half, Spirits of the Dead, Juliet of the Spirits, you know, stuff like that. That does have some of like his, you know, magic realisms or imagination stuff going on. But yeah, La Dolce Vita, you know, is his best known movie and a turning point, but yeah, it's more of a straightforward type of movie in that it doesn't. What got its fame at the time is that it was sort of seen by, again, this is like 1960, seen as like immoral, because really, although it was actually a very honest movie, because it was highlighting kind of like what the Italian lifestyle was, and yet, but the censors didn't like that because it highlighted some things that were considered immoral back in the day. That's really what got him on the map there. But yeah, La Strada, that's 1954. Again, that's a really good popular movie. I haven't seen that one. But yeah, it has less to do with the style that he would adopt, say, more into life. I think the mid-60s going forward, where, yeah, he'd start to let his imagination run wild and do more surrealistic type stuff. Never really quite reaching full surrealism exactly, but at least hinting of it. And again, I keep beating a dead horse saying magic realism, which I realize is a kind of a flawed term. It can be used all over the place, but to give people an idea again of magic realism, we were talking about Wes Anderson. He uses it to the hilt, right? Like, it's the real world, but it's slightly off kilter, has some weird exaggerated things that wouldn't happen in real life, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of what Fellini was going for too. And certainly in this movie, as we said, it highlights how bizarre European society could be, but it probably goes a little over the edge and exaggerates it a little bit. Not too much, though. A lot of really weird shit did happen, for sure. For instance, the circus thing, I'm sure that totally did happen. I mean, that seems pretty on the nose. Traveling circus with their freaks and stuff. Hell, that happened right into the 20th century. Mm-hmm. So it's easy enough to imagine happening.
Well, I've even seen some of that type stuff when I was a kid.
Wow.
It wasn't, as hardcore, but
or exploitive, hopefully.
It was like, the world's shortest lady and, like giant animals and stuff. It was just, not real, exploitive stuff, but it was the giant fat person was in there one time, I think.
Nice. No,
which now, you could go to any Walmart and see that.
Yeah. Well, why would you pay? Just go to your Walmart. You'll see them. Funny. One of the last times I was out walking, it was really funny because it was so quiet. I walk with my headphones on usually anyway, but I'm usually pretty aware, like, of people coming up behind me. So that doesn't really, people don't bump into me or anything like that. But I almost did get run over by a super fat guy in one of those, like, scooters. He just came up behind me, whisper quiet on that thing.
Oh, wow.
And I only, like, at the last second realized he was behind me. Like, apparently he was just going to plow through me.
Wow.
Like, he took up the whole sidewalk, obviously. Like, I guess his plan was just to, like, bump me, or I have no idea what happened.
Oh, man. Yeah, this could be an ad for how quiet those things are.
Yeah. I already have a bad track record. I think I told you a few months ago I was coming out of Shoppers Drug Mart, and I saw a guy in, like, just not a fat guy, just a guy in a motorized wheelchair. And he was gonna go. I was coming here, and he was going across from me. I basically misjudged his speed in that I thought I could get by well before he got there, and I wound up basically cutting him off. And he I'm sure it was sarcastically said sorry to me, and I was so caught off guard by it, I just threw over my shoulder. That's okay. And I realized, like, he's just thinking, like, what a dick. I'm sure he was 100% sarcastic when he said sorry. Like, he was just thinking, what a dick. This guy just, like, walked right in front of me. Like, it was just because I misjudged his speed. I thought I'd be able to get through before that. So, yeah. But, yeah, no, this fat guy was just going to, I don't know, run me over or bump me, because I just, like, the last second kind of sensed his presence or heard him and just was, whoa, and I sidestepped, and he just went zooming by, didn't give me a look.
So he was just going to mow you over.
Yeah. And whenever I think of this, I think I told you this too. It's funny too. But I'm sure the viewers will enjoy it anyway, because God knows if I told it to you privately or a sausage factory or what. But back in my hometown that Ryan and I come from, there were a couple times where out in the neighborhood, not too far from where our park was, we'd sometimes see this really fat guy that was on one of those scooters things too. And sometimes we'd see him out, and the reason we would see him is because this was on the route to the video store we used to always go to. We used to walk or bike to.
All right.
So this was right on that route, and this is how we would see him. And that on hot days in the summer, this guy would be out on his scooter and, like, on that street. I don't know if he lived on the street or what, but he would, like, but he used different people's yards, so it couldn't just be his own yard. Where he would pull into people's driveways and drink out of their hoses.
Oh, you did tell me that. Yeah,
Which is
that is
just
weird.
hilarious to see. I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with it, and if you're out on a hot day, you gotta hydrate, I guess. But it's just isn't there like a cup holder for you to have a water bottle on that thing? Multiple times. I saw it at least twice. Ryan and other friends saw it at least 2 or 3 times themselves. So this guy, just deciding, I'll just go get a good blast from the hose there. It's such a funny sight. Really big fat guy, probably like almost around 400 pounds, just turning on somebody's hose and casually drinking out of it. I mean, you gotta hydrate. It's important. You don't want to go fainting in the heat. So, I guess nothing wrong with it, but it does make for a very funny sight, I have to say.
Wow.
Yeah, what this movie doesn't really highlight is how there was a time period. I mean, although they do show him as, escaping prison, they don't really emphasize the fact that he spent quite a big chunk of his life on the run from various authorities. Some of it because he got mixed up with spies and stuff. There were even times where when he wasn't spying, where people thought he was a spy, and various people were assigned to spy on his activities, which again is kind of like something we saw in Barry Lyndon, that part. So yeah, a lot of intrigue going on in these social circles and governments and stuff. Europe being kind of a nest of vipers in some ways. And there were certain times where he got kicked out of places. In 1766, he was in Poland, and he got kicked out of Warsaw because after he had some sort of here's another Barry Lyndon type thing. He had a duel. He had a duel with some count or something over some young actress. Again, had something to do with a woman. Like that should have been in this movie, and it wasn't. Seemed like any time that would have been a chance to show him as like brave and capable. And again, that doesn't fit with what Fellini's agenda is for this movie, where they just want to show him as sort of a fraud and an idiot. And of course, one thing that I'm sort of surprised that they didn't really highlight, except maybe the end of the movie. The end of the movie does sort of show that by the time he was like in his like 50s, he was kind of riddled with venereal disease, which really did take a toll on him.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So he was out there spreading the goodness.
Yeah, spreading and picking up. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, they're very times where he was like so weak that like he would almost like die. I don't really know what the cures or they didn't have very great treatment for things back then, but he did at least over at certain points bounce back. But as he got older, he couldn't bounce back. I mean, the time he was like really old, it was like he was really messed up. As they do sort of show him in the movie, when they show him at the end of the movie, he is really in a pathetic state, physically and well, you can say professionally, everything like that.
I think I'm trying to remember.
Also, I mean, this is a man that like covered basically over like almost 5,000 miles of Europe, mostly in like coaches. Can you imagine that kind of travel throughout your life? Just bump, hour after hour, like crazy.
So like chlamydia, gonorrhea.
Oh God, yes.
Syphilis.
I figure he couldn't have gotten syphilis, or if he did, he got it later in life, because syphilis
kills you, right?
It fucks you up
without treatment.
Yeah, like syphilis, basically unchecked, will just decimate you and turn you into like an idiot sitting in a chair that can't do anything, more or less. That's why there's various figures in history, especially ones that acted erratically, were thought to have had syphilis at some point, including Hitler.
I think is that one of the reasons why the powder wigs came about? Because it wasn't one of the symptoms that would make your hair fall out.
Oh God, I have no idea. I thought it had something to do with like maybe lice or something.
Yeah, that too. But it was one of the figureheads somewhere did that because they had, and all of a sudden it became a big trend when they started doing it. I was reading about it when we did Barry Lyndon. I was reading about the, but yeah, lice is definitely one of the reasons. But you still have to delouse your wig.
Yeah,
but it's a lot easier than doing it when it's not on your head.
Also missing from this movie is lots of famous people he met and hung out with, which seems like missed opportunity, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosopher. And again, he didn't just like meet him once. Like he had enough philosophical knowledge and interesting ideas that somebody like Rousseau actually liked to talk to him, you know. So again, he's not the big empty-headed fraud that he's portrayed as in here. You know, he met both Frederick and Catherine the Great, although those were fairly brief meetings that didn't go too well because I think whatever the hell, he had some idea for something and they weren't interested in stuff like that. But I mean, he met all sorts of interesting people. He at least met Mozart. I don't know if he really had a relationship with Mozart, but he met Mozart. And he did embark on all sorts of interesting enterprises. One was he was trying to do a translation of the Iliad into the modern Tuscan Italian language. I don't know if he ever finished that, but he did finish a lot of things. As anybody that looks up Casanova, he did finish quite a few things. It's not just his memoirs he's known for. He wrote some fiction. He even wrote one of the earliest instances of science fiction, although I forget what that's called. I'll have to check on that, what it was called, but I wasn't even aware of that until I looked it up. So I mean, so this would have been 1700s science fiction. I'll have to see what the hell it was. Oh, it was called Icosameron. Anyway, sounds interesting. But I mean, he wrote plays, essays. Obviously, he was a guy of letters. A lot of people back in those days were, but again, he had real respect from a lot of people. And this movie does not portray that as such at all, which, okay. But yeah, the movie's more about just sort of going from set piece to set piece, showing off, debauchery, showing off over-the-top weirdness, and just, the decadence of those societies and stuff. And it does a pretty good job of that, but as you said, it doesn't really give you a cool, a firm story to grasp onto and follow. It doesn't have those plot beats. It doesn't have those threads and stuff, or the payoff, which does make it kind of a challenging watch in some ways. You have to more or less detach yourself from that and watch it more as, just sort of watch it as episode to episode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually, I'm one of those people that always talks about, I try my best to watch a movie start to finish. This is one of the few movies where I don't think it really matters if you break up watching it, because it's kind of told in that fashion anyway.
It's quite long too.
Yeah, it's over 2.5 hours, which seems a bit excessive for it, considering the stuff they left out. That seems kind of excessive, if there's all this stuff that's from Casanova's life that you're not even going to bother to show, it seems kind of weird that you're focusing or drawing out some of these lesser instances and stuff. But for whatever reason, Fellini had an agenda. Fellini had an interest in doing a certain portrayal, and I guess I can't fault him for that exactly, but
as long as it is, a lot of it had to actually be cut out because they had some reels of film stolen from the lab in Rome, the Technicolor lab. So I think all the stuff with Barbara Steele was not in there, and there's someone called Chesty. Her name is Chesty. I can't think of her last name, but her scenes were obviously cut. And
you know what's hilarious? I've seen parts of 2 full movies she was in, and they're not even movies. They're just exploitive things. So these are where she uses her massive tits.
Yeah.
And they were called Deadly Weapons and Double Agent 73. And and at least one of them, she's like an assassin, and she kills guys with her boobs.
So you want to do that next week?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. She had a 73-inch bust. Jesse Morgan. She was from Poland. She was from Poland.
I mean, that's great. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not particularly attracted to stuff like that.
Like overly massive.
Yeah. It's. I mean, not only is it intimidating, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, it's one of those things that looks good not in real life. Like it looks good in like anime because then like gravity doesn't work, right? But in real life, So
that's obviously natural. Being I don't know, 74. I would imagine natural, but I think it would have worked perfectly in this film, though.
No, hers were real. By the way, I just looked it up. There was no implants for her. She was just a freak of nature, as some of these people are.
Yeah, that's like just a mutation. It's like, you're missing the thing that tells your brain to make your tits stop growing.
Yeah. And again, I mean, she turned it to her advantage. She did what she could with it. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I was disappointed. I was watching for her in this movie. I was disappointed that I didn't see her. I can tell you, because I just wanted to see, what she'd be wearing and stuff like that, how the tits would hold up, whatever costume she was in.
It's I mean, for considering the subject matter of this film, it's really, I mean, there may be like one or two nude shots at all. I mean, just of a bare breast. Not even much at all.
Yeah, the most you see is one of the last sex scenes toward the end where he has that sort of orgy with the actors or whatever. He meets like that act. Remember, he's at that inn and he meets the actors troupe. And what's funny about that is like he's kind of met his match because they're all so insatiable, and he looks like he wants to quit. Like his eyes are rolling back in his head, and they're all flipping out, and the one of them's riding them, and one of them is like, like they're all going crazy, and he looks like he wants to die. It's pretty funny, but that's probably the closest thing to an actually kind of sexy scene in the movie. And again, it's ruined by shots of him because he's just like, now he's not pumping away. Now he's just like looking like he's getting tortured, like he's on the bottom, and he looks like he just wants it to end. It's pretty funny.
Well, yeah, think of how easy this would have been to make it like an erotic film, and it would have, that's not frowned upon. I'm not talking about like a pornography, but an erotic.
I mean, an Italian film that's erotic. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's like, again, Fellini's going out of his way to break the mold in several ways here, which, again, I get it, I guess, but it's not like you. I'm a bit disappointed. It's not that interesting, really. The most interesting thing about the movie is that this is Donald Sutherland. Like, I mean, it's had an interesting career anyway, and this is one of the more interesting footnotes of his career is that not only did he play Casanova, which sounds weird, but he played him in a really bizarre fashion, too.
That was one of the notes I sent to Cole last week. I was like, man, I just realized that actually is Donald Sutherland. I was like, man, this guy looks just like him. He even sounds like him when he talks.
Yeah.
But so this, I mean, according to IMDb, this is an English language film. And that's why, Fellini was so upset when it wasn't, received very well by American audiences.
But it's clear that most of it wasn't shot in English.
Yeah.
English was a dub. Just like I watched some of it in French, and not all of that was French either. The French is dub. It's like a lot of those movies that they made in Italy and stuff like at the time, even like some of the giallos we watched, like they just sort of shot it in whatever language, and it was going to be dubbed anyway, at least once. And that's kind of what they did with, a movie like, say, Suspiria and stuff like that. The actors in Suspiria, people are speaking different languages in different scenes. And then just for whatever audience they're showing, they dubbed it in English for the English audience, they dubbed it in Italian for the Italian audience, and so forth. I think this was kind of the same thing, because even when you're watching Donald Sutherland, and if you watch the English dub, that's Donald Sutherland's voice, it doesn't always line up with his own thing. So it's clear that like he's dubbing himself.
So you think they just dubbed the audio for the entire thing?
I think so, yeah.
For various languages. Huh.
That's the impression I got from watching it. It definitely seemed that way.
I watched an English dub with, I believe, French subtitles. I believe that's what it was. Yeah. And then I think there was a version that was it in French that you watched?
Yeah, I was watching a French version, then I switched to an English version.
Okay.
Neither had subtitles. There's also some bits towards the end where he's talking to the people in the actors troupe. They're Austrian and they're all speaking German. I can understand little bits and pieces here. I can catch some of the words. Like there's a part where he's sleeping and there's these two girls and they're like saying, "Don't wake him up" and stuff. Like I could get a little bit of that. So there's some German in there too, but that's because And the point is it's actually a language he doesn't speak. He even mentions that in the movie when he meets his mother. There's a scene where he briefly meets his mother after like not seeing her for years, and she's kind of just like Fellini. She's like, you suck. I'm not interested in anything you do. You're a waste of life. Like, I don't know if that ever happened, but it just seems to reinforce Fellini's view. Like, he's just some idiot going around wasting his life, and his mother doesn't give a damn about him. As far as I can tell, that's the only purpose of that scene. But yes, Fellini wanted to expose the void of Casanova's life. In
I just
fact,
don't. I don't
apparently
get
the
it.
original script was even worse on him, which is hard to believe
Yeah.
because he just comes across as such an idiot and like almost the exact opposite of everything he professes to be. But again, historical evidence seems to suggest that he was legit in a lot of these things. But yeah, he did con some people when it came to some things, but that was just because, there's no such thing as magic anyway. But that he did have some real knowledge when it came to actual, subjects of substance. Giacomo Casanova. He's quite prolific and wrote quite a few things. And I'd like to read some of them. The most famous is just sort of a thing called like My Life or something like that. But I mean, there's quite a few Casanova movies out there, so if people are interested in a different interpretation, there are many. The earliest is one from the silent era that stars Bela Lugosi, believe it or not.
Yeah, I saw that.
But they even made a 2005 one with Heath Ledger that I think I saw a piece of on TV before. I don't really know what the definitive Casanova movie would be, though. I don't know enough about it. And some of them are just kind of like loosely based on Casanova rather than like actually being anything about his name. What's interesting is there is another Italian movie about him called The Mysterious Rider, Il Cavaliere Misterioso, which is a 1948 film by Riccardo Freda, which has Casanova in it. Although I don't know if that's all about Casanova or if Casanova just happens to be in the movie. I'm not sure. Much information on it. Oh, Dino De Laurentiis produced that? How old is this fucker?
He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know he was producing movies in the 40s, though. I thought he produced movies in the 70s and 80s.
He was in his 90s when he died, wasn't he?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I never thought about it. Man. And even if he was that old, I didn't realize that he was producing movies that long. I had no idea he was producing movies back in the frickin' 40s. That's impressive.
Yeah, 91.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you familiar at all with the Food Network?
Sure.
There's a show, or the person, Giada De Laurentiis. That's his granddaughter. She's you probably know her. She always has her tits out when she's cooking.
Yeah,
like without fail, she'll have some low cut thing on.
Yeah, and she has a show because she's rich as hell because of the family.
Right, basically. Right. I just thought that was interesting that was his granddaughter.
But yeah, I knew that. My mom told me about that. I don't think I've seen it
forever on the Food Network.
Yeah. And I think Italians. I think it hits. It's true.
Hey, there you go. We should have had Chesty in there. Or was that her name?
Yeah, Chesty Morgan, even though she's...
Well, right on the nose, huh? Chesty.
And I know Maria Bello is American, but she's like of Italian descent, isn't she?
I would think so.
I mean, when I think about an actress of the last few years whose breasts were prominent, she's right up there.
I mean, there's plenty of ones that have had work done.
There's also the oldest Bond girl a couple of years ago when she was Inspector. It's like 49 or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
Chesty's birth name is, wow.
Some Polish thing?
Polish. Very.
She went by Zsa Zsa briefly. Oh, it's funny. I just saw Maria Bello and didn't even realize it. I watched Lights Out, which was crap.
Was it? Was it bad?
Yeah, it's not worth watching at all. Like, sometimes I can say, oh, well, it's not very good, but it's worth watching. Lights Out is not worth watching. It was a real waste of time. For sure. What have you been watching lately? Anything cool?
I saw the film Hereditary last night.
All right. It's supposed to be scary and stuff.
It was very fucked up. I will say that towards the end. It was decent.
Yeah.
It's getting rave reviews, but
Yeah, they tend to do with a lot of horror movies now. It's like anything that's decent is just like,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I get it. There's not a lot of great horror coming out the last while and stuff. Speaking of Suspiria, I saw the preview for the Suspiria remake, and it looks good. I mean, we don't need it, but it looks like they're doing it the right way, I guess. You see that preview?
I haven't seen the preview, but I like a lot of the actresses that are attached.
I mean, the one thing you can say about the Suspiria remake is probably it'll be more coherent.
Yeah.
Suspiria is a great film, and I love it to death. And I don't even mind that it's not coherent because that's not what it's about. But I'm just thinking, if you are going to remake it, here's a chance to give it a little bit more of a story that makes sense. So maybe they'll do that.
I just don't understand why. Why not take that and do something similar, but make it your own?
Yeah.
You have to have
a sequel.
I mean, do you really think these 17-year-old pieces of shit are going to know what Suspiria is? I mean,
probably
call it Witch Movie, and they'll go watch it. I mean,
yeah. I have to say though, when I saw Suspiria last September when they did the re-release, and I saw it at the Atlantic Film Festival, that place was packed. So that was really encouraging. It was packed, and man, our ears almost bled. The sound was up so loud, and that movie's just sort of a loud attack on your senses anyway. Like, man,
yeah.
It almost
I remember you saying that.
It almost ruined my enjoyment of it. I mean, I still really enjoyed it. It was a really great night. Like I said, I got to sit next to a guy that had directed the film I saw at the festival the night before. Nova Scotian filmmaker that did a film called The Crescent. I don't know if there's a way for you to find it, but you should definitely be able to check it out if you can. It's a really cool little movie, The Crescent.
Yeah, I've got it on my list whenever it comes out.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Even
Maria
though
Bello was a lesbian.
Is she?
Did not know that.
I didn't know that either. Even though I'm pretty sure I've seen her have a lesbian scene before.
Or at least she was in 2015.
Oh. Not one of those changeable people, are you? Like frickin' Anne Heche, who was just a liar.
Oh, is she changed back? Okay.
She changed back a zillion years ago. I don't think she was ever a lesbian. She just didn't know what she was doing. And I don't try to say that about most people. It's not my business, stuff like that. But Anne Heche, I think, was a clear case of somebody that would either didn't know what they were doing or wanted attention. Like, I don't think.
If you remember Amber Heard, who was a very staunch lesbian for a few years, and then all of a sudden married Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Apparently got the
shit you're a lesbian until you have a chance to marry one of the most eligible bachelors in the world.
I mean, whatever. I don't really want to put labels on things, but
yeah. They had a horrible relationship. He yelled at her all the time. I have no idea if there's any physical abuse, which she alleged, but there's video proof of him yelling at her.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot harder for a man to do that in the public eye, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For a man to be like, I'm dating a dude now, and then I'm dating a lady again now. I don't think the media would tolerate that. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know though. I mean, I think nowadays, it's kind of weird that most people don't realize that Richard Pryor was bisexual.
Oh, really? No, I didn't realize that either.
And he didn't hide it in the slightest. And this is the 70s and stuff. So he was super proud of it and stuff. And even though he was married, his wife just accepted the fact that he had to get cocked too. He was super into it and super proud and in your face about it. And yet most people don't seem to realize it. He even bragged that he once slept with Marlon Brando. That was a big deal to him.
I can only imagine the shit that went on in those dim clubs.
Yeah. Because, I don't know, it's kind of almost like the pansexual thing we said, in that I think Richard Pryor saw himself just sort of as a sexual being. If he was into it, he was into it, and stuff. But, the more, technical term would be, okay, he was bisexual, I guess, and stuff. But, yeah. So, that was, I don't know if it was accepted or people just dismissed it and didn't listen to it. Because what's funny is that they're around the exact same time that Richard Pryor was, saying and doing these things. You had David Bowie in his androgyny stage encouraging everybody to think he was bisexual when he actually wasn't.
Right.
Like he just encouraged it. He let people think that, and even like sometimes told little lies about it. Like when he met one of his wives, or maybe his wife and stuff, he said, "Oh, the way we met is because we were sleeping with the same guy. That's how we met," which isn't true. He never, like, yeah. So,
I
and
think
he did eventually come clean about that, but just for a while because it helped his image, right?
exactly,
Like it made him seem all cool and stuff. And again, he brought in the whole androgyny and stuff. A lot of people assumed, oh yeah, he's into guys stuff too. Like, so he just encouraged people and stuff like that. But as it turns out, there's nothing historically to back that up and stuff.
So the whole deal with him and Mick Jagger, that's bullshit.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Really? Oh well.
Then there's the things like again, I mean, not like that we care or anything like that, like to make a big deal. But when you talk about, oh, everybody wondering about sexuality, and so I remember that a band I loved in the '90s was Bush. Gavin Rossdale, who's basically managed to stay in the public eye because he married Gwen Stefani.
Yeah.
But a big thing about Gavin Rossdale that he always denied was that back in the 80s, when he was he was a model for a while, there was another model, a guy, and that they had a relationship and they dated. And that guy many times said, yeah, we dated and stuff. And Gavin has always vehemently denied it, which I think which might be true. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's true that he was just doing it because he was part of, the very masculine grunge and post-grunge rock, scene. And, it would have been seen probably detrimental to his reputation for people to know that. I mean, he was a big heartthrob in the 90s. Girls went nuts for him. Like, and the band encouraged it too. I remember at like their concerts, one of the shirts you could buy, a girl's shirt, was just one that said like, "I heart Gavin," and stuff. So I'm not saying it's true or it isn't true, and I don't care if it is. I'm just saying, if it's not true, I understood why you would deny it because it's not true. But if it is true, I understood why he would deny it too, because I think it probably would have, hurt his image at the time. Anyway, I don't give a shit. I don't care.
I could totally see his publicist being like, "Yeah, we got to fight this."
Yeah.
But now, if he came out and said, "Oh yeah, totally, I fuck tons of guys," that wouldn't even be like on the news. Like nobody would even give a shit,
Yeah.
Which I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. I don't know why anybody would care. Like, nope, no, I'm never gonna listen to Come Down Again. Nope.
What kind of hidden meaning is in there? What do you mean, come down? On who?
I like Bush a lot too.
Yeah, what's cool is Ryan had this cool DVD that they released. No, it wasn't even DVD. It was before DVDs. Ryan had a VHS from just around the time their second album dropped, and it's cool because it had concert footage of them, and they were opening for Metallica at some festival in Europe. And one of the songs, in the last song they played their set was "Come Down," and like the crowd was nuts. Like it was true. The crowd had like no idea who they were. They were all Metallica fans, but they were like super into Bush, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. Wow.
I wonder if he still has that. If he knows where that is, I'd love to see that again. Or maybe if it's on YouTube. A lot of that stuff shows up on YouTube.
I can't imagine Metallica fans liking Bush at all.
I know, right?
That is weird. They're yeah.
Well, you have to also keep in mind that this was just around the time that Metallica was actually giving in to the societal pressure and using some of that post-grunge. Like, Load is definitely, has post-grunge stuff in it.
Oh, man, yeah.
And that's where, their true fans, dropped off. See, I was never, a big fan of the thrash, so it didn't matter to me. I don't care. And I'm too young. It's not like I was listening to Metallica in 1987, But
yeah, see, I wasn't really either. I didn't really like Metallica till the 90s with the Black Album.
And yeah, for so many, the purists, the Black Albums were
right,
that's where they sold out and stuff, and it only got worse after that, But for me, yeah, it was Black Album, and then they had some hazy stuff from the 80s I didn't really know, and then Load and Reload were, to me, okay albums. I was never a Metallica fan, They were my friend. I had a friend who was a huge Metallica fan, so I heard it all the time, and for a while disliked them just because I hated hearing them all the time. Eventually, I did like them. I mean, my favorite Metallica song is an old school song. It's "For Whom the Bell Tolls," but I don't really mind the newer stuff either. When I say newer, I mean 90s. I don't mean Death Magnetic.
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. I've heard some of that stuff, but I don't really care for it.
Can't be worse than Saint Anger. Saint Anger's the worst thing. I've heard every track on that album. It's just shit Shit. It's mixed really terrible too.
That's the one before the other one you mentioned, right? The Magnetic.
Yeah, it's the first one. It's their first new album after Jason Newsted left. It's the first new album that had the big weird guy that doesn't look like him.
Yeah. The bass player guy. That's weird. Yeah. Did you see the documentary they did? It may be called Saint Anger. It was
Some Kind of Monster, right?
Yeah.
I saw some of it. Yeah, they get pretty real.
It's not bad. I wonder how much of it is real, but I feel like it's a lot of fake drama bullshit.
Yeah. Lars Ulrich is such an unlikable person. Like he's obviously a talented guy. He's a great drummer, and he's one of the principal songwriters. And I know he had kind of a difficult life in that way, in that like 90% of people, like for instance, I don't do anything extraordinary, but my parents are proud of everything I do. Mm-hmm. And when I could play piano and sax, they were proud of that. Whereas Lars was in the weird position in that not only was he good enough to be a professional drummer, but he wasn't just some professional drummer like doing like I don't know, part of like a house band or some sort of recording thing. Like he's in a wildly popular band. He's one of the founders of the band, one of the principal songwriters, and like his dad was just never really impressed by his talent. Like his dad was just always drilling him. Kind of funny. It's more like what you think of like a sports dad, but his dad was like that with like drumming. Like his dad would be like in the studio and he'd tell him what he did wrong for a take and stuff like that.
It's Danish, right?
I think so. Because I've seen footage of that. I've seen like footage of like him like doing like doing like a track in the studio. His dad being like,
"That's stupid. Why? Why? That's got to be fake."
I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, let me come down there and watch your set so I can frown. He's like one of the best drummers I can think of off the top of my head.
Platinum albums. Worldwide success. Well, yeah, he is actually lauded for his technical success too. Like they're not just a popular band or a band that is known for like having good musicality and stuff. And yeah, his dad's not impressed.
No. I knew you'd never do anything with your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, he's an annoying person, I find.
He is. He really
Not that he hasn't said things I don't disagree with. Like, for instance, like around the time they were it might have been the Black Album or something like that. He just said like how, when people, about the fans saying like, oh, you sold out or you changed. It's just like, well, I want to grow creatively as a person. So, and as a musician, so we don't want to just keep doing the same thing. So if you guys don't like it, that's fine. And, I respect that and agree with that.
I understand that. And I think
there's so many people to this day that like hate Metallica so much for just not doing thrash metal over and over again for like 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they still play them at the concerts.
They have a rabid fan base. They really do.
Yeah, I think I told you this before too. Speaking of VHSs, so my friend who is the big Metallica fan had a VHS of Metallica from the early 90s, I think 92, called Metallica Live Shit, Binge and Purge. And it's a concert, but it also has footage around the concert and before the concert. And the concert, it's a double bill with Black Sabbath. This was one of the reunions where Ozzy come back.
Oh, wow.
Black Sabbath was doing concerts. And it was a double bill. Like they had equal billing and stuff like that. And it's probably somewhere like, I don't know, California, something like that. And so it's like a documentary style thing before they do the show. And they have, the guys backstage talking and stuff. But then they also do like a crowd piece where they're out in the crowd talking to people. And it's great. They're asking the people, who are you here to see? You're here to see Sabbath or Metallica? And they obviously did all the ones that could say Metallica and stuff like that. There's these great guys, these, dirtbag looking guys with the long hair and the huge ripped jeans and stuff like that. And they have like these really weird accents that I have no idea where they come from. And they're just like, who are you here to see? And they're like, Metallica. And he goes, not Sabbath? No. And he goes, why not Sabbath? And he goes, cause. He goes, cause why? He goes, the fucking better. Which I thought was hilarious. I was like, this is the level of discourse you get from a Metallica fan. This is their level of, perspicacity. Cause the fucking better. Which I thought was hilarious.
That's like a child's argument.
Yeah, I mean, they were probably teenagers, but,
yeah.
Maybe like 19. Something like that. But yeah, I just thought that's the only thing I remember. I can't even remember what songs they played in the concert or anything like that. I just remember some of that. I remember that very clearly.
Yeah, that was a popular thing around. I think quite a few bands did the same.
But yeah, VHS is
Same,
like tour
same
diary,
style thing you're talking about. Yeah,
like a tour diary type thing. Yeah.
showing. Yeah, it's like the Ministry one that just recently came out is really good because it's really negative on whatever the lead guy in Ministry's name is.
Yeah.
Just it just chronicles his drug use basically. It's pretty awesome.
Nice.
His spinning out of control. Is it sick? Something sick.
Sick Sad World. No, I know. That's from a show. A show. Oh, I'm getting hungry. After this.
Let me see what it's called. Fix.
Federico Fellini.
Fix, the Ministry movie.
Oh, nice. No, they for whatever reason I wasn't aware of Ministry back in the day. Like, it wasn't until afterwards. Like,
You're not into the industrial type scene?
Not really. I knew people were. My second girlfriend was. She was into industrial stuff that was like so like lo-fi. Like I couldn't even find a melody in it.
Yeah.
Like 9 Inch Nails is like the most like mainstream that like industrial. She was all like on the other end of it.
Oh, okay.
She listened to all this like a lot of weird lo-fi stuff that was like garbled and stuff that I wasn't into, but she was into it. So yeah, I mean, so no, I didn't know much industrial stuff. Like the most industrial stuff I knew was like the Crow soundtrack.
I was somewhat into Ministry early on. I was into 9 Inch Nails, and let's see, there was a band I liked a lot. It was called Bile.
Oh yeah, I've heard the name.
Have you? And the album I liked a lot was called Suck Pump.
Huh.
It's kind of, I mean, it's, yeah, you're probably not going to like it, but it's definitely different. And I guess Tool may be considered like that a little, but I think Tool is a little more advanced than that.
Tool's yeah, okay. I always knew Tool. I knew Tool.
That's like one of my all-time favorite bands.
I like Tool, except when they get too proggy, because then it gets repetitive. Like Tool will have a song that's like 8 minutes long, and 2 minutes of it will be like the same riff and drum beat for 2 straight minutes before it moves on to the next section.
It's a bit much, yeah.
I
agree with that. And Throbbing Gristle, I think, are Canadian, aren't they?
I don't know them, so maybe. And then there's some bands that sort of skirted around that, but were more alternative. My favorite is there's one that Piz likes a lot too. Is Deftones. I really like Deftones. Orc fucking hates them.
I don't know why.
He'll be quick to tell you that Deftones are dog shit. Mostly he hates Chino's voice, I think. Oh. Which I think is really interesting. I like how Chino goes from that weird whispery thing to the scream. I think it's really unique and stuff. At least he's not fat anymore. Remember for a few years Chino was really fat? It was embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, Pizzazz liked a lot of their newer albums, which I can't get into.
I haven't really listened to anything from there since like 2010 or something. I think
Pony's the last thing I got that I did not like, and I haven't bought anything after that.
There's something like that Diamond in the title or something. I think that's the last one I heard. Was like 2010 or 2011 or something.
I know that when their last album came out, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Pizzazz was talking about how good it was, and I listened to it, and
I didn't listen to it.
It's okay. I mean, it's
yeah.
It's just more of the same,
Here's another band that I have no idea. It was like a black hole in that I never heard of them. Okay, so obviously 90s. I know all the 90s bands, even the ones I didn't like, right? I know them all. You know who I never heard and never ever seen to get rotation on much music? Candlebox. I have no memory of them back in the day at all. I remember everything else. Everything. But not Candlebox. I remember somebody talking about Candlebox about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was like, who are they? Like, what? Seriously? They were American too, maybe.
They weren't around very long, were they?
I don't know, but through all of the 90s. 90 right to 2000, so they straddled the 90s perfectly. But yeah, I never heard them. And yet they were part of Maverick, which had Alanis Morissette, Deftones. And they toured with anybody that was popular in the 90s. They even toured with Our Lady Peace at one point, which, would have been on my radar.
Right.
They're a Canadian institution.
I like Candlebox more than there's another band that was almost just like Candlebox.
But
That always got radio play. Collective Soul.
Oh yeah, Collective Soul are okay. I really regret not seeing them. About 10 years ago, they played a show here, and I didn't go. I cheaped out. I really should have gone because they have enough songs that I like. Collective Soul. I really like Y Park too. That's one of my favorite songs. Usually when you think of hot ladies, it's the rap videos, but do the YouTube search for Y Part 2 by Collective Soul. That video is just stacked with hot ladies. That's a great song.
I used to like the Alicia Silverstone and the Aerosmith videos.
Oh yeah, that song. It's like the same song twice. Crazy and Crying. They sound almost exactly the same.
And one of them has Liv Tyler in it.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's right. They're both they're underage in it too, which is cool. Not that like they get naked or anything like that, but they're both like 17.
Yeah.
And there's a part where Liv Tyler strips for her.
Yeah.
They're at a strip joint and stuff.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that in the remember the pop-up video of that?
Mm.
You never saw the pop-up video?
No.
It's good. It had all sorts of interesting information. I can't remember it now, of course.
Pop-up
video.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw a pop-up video, but I didn't see for that song. I don't remember.
I think I saw all of those.
That was interesting. I mean, they don't do music videos anymore, really. I mean, I guess you put them on YouTube or whatever, but
I don't know.
What year was that? 93, 94?
For Crying? That's crazy. I think that's 93.
Yeah. Yeah, those videos got me through some tough times when I was 12, 13 years old.
I'll bet.
It was also one of the disc, whatever that stupid album was called they had, Pump. That was one of the ones I got from, did you ever have this thing where it was like Billboard Music or one of the companies that they would send you like a lot of CDs for free, and then like in 6 months you had to buy like 2. Did you ever do that type of stuff?
Like Columbia House?
Yeah, Columbia House would do it.
I never did it, but I mean, yeah, I was aware of it.
Yeah, that was, of course, I couldn't afford to buy any, back then CDs were, $20 a pop. Yeah. So, yeah, that was one of the ones I got with my first Columbia House purchase. And then my mom found out and sent them all back.
Yeah. Stuff like that, you always got nailed on the Canadian side of it. Because it would be like, first CD is 99 cents and then blah, blah, blah. But like it didn't work Canadian or something. Like it had like brackets down the bottom that like the offer was different in Canada or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, the album after Pump was the 93 one, Get a Grip.
Oh, Get a Grip. That was it. Yeah.
It had Crying and Crazy on it. Which both sounded, which they used as, they were both singles, and they both sounded the same. But they also had Living on the Edge.
Yeah. Which
I first heard as Living in the Fridge by Weird Al. That's how I first heard that. And they had the song Amazing, which I know I knew, but I can't remember how it went. But I know Amazing is one of the songs I knew. I'm never an Aerosmith person, ever.
I don't know. I really didn't know what I was at the time. So I listened to pretty much everything.
I mean, it's not like I hated them or anything like that, but no, they represented sort of a weird kind of cock rock type thing.
Well, they were old school even then,
Yeah, I know. I mean, they went back to the 70s.
So
Sweet Emotion and all that.
I didn't know. I bought everything and I liked whatever until I developed my own sense of self.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I bought all sorts of stuff, but not.
I couldn't listen to that stuff now. I know that.
93 was a weird time in that it was like transitional for some of those older bands, like them still being around. Because I remember that was around the time that like the Red Hot Chili Peppers had like their most different album, and yet it's the one I know the best probably.
The one with Dave Navarro.
Yeah, it was when they had Dave Navarro, who did not fit in the band at all, and they were trying for a more hard rock sound instead of the funky stuff.
That's a badass album too. I love it.
The album that has Aeroplane on it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
like it too, but it's just not their sound, you know? It's completely different from anything they would ever do before or after.
It's not.
It proved,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like you said, though, that they could do it in a different way. Like, a
Was
lot of
it
people think it was bad, but I think it was good too.
Warped? Maybe was the first single off of there,
Yep, that's right.
and that's a really heavy song,
Yeah.
which I love.
When Navarro came over, he brought a heaviness. He's
Well, I
another
mean,
guy. He's another guy you can love to hate.
didn't
Even
he come from?
Jane's Addiction.
Was that all? Okay, he wasn't in Pornos for Pyros. Okay,
Jane's Addiction is weird because I never thought of them as heavy because the only song you ever heard was Been Caught Stealing. Maybe they had heavy songs, but I only heard their one-hit wonder, Been Caught Stealing.
I was never the biggest fan, but I mean, there's a few tracks I like a lot.
No, that's the only one I know. To this day. I mean, I've probably listened to those others just to see what they sounded like. But yeah.
I've been caught stealing. That was a good video.
Yeah. Yeah. This one, the videos had something going on in them. So I remember the video for Aeroplane really well.
Yeah.
But
didn't they kiss a lot?
Oh yeah.
I want to say Dave Navarro tried to kiss everybody in the video.
Then like Metallica tried to do the same thing.
I was gonna bring that up earlier.
Like Metallica's like, we're not just some old fogies from the 80s. Look how weird and alternative we are.
Look how hip we are, guys.
Like, no, just no. Like
they did it on the the fold out from the
no
the
liner
CD.
notes for like load. They're like touching tongues or something.
They did an interview around that same period of time, and Lars and Hatfield kissed each other, and I mean, I don't care. It's just, why are you doing it?
They were just doing it to fit in or shock.
Exactly. That's selling out, man, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And that music was shit. I mean, I bought it and listened to it, but it was shit. I guess that was part of the problem.
Yeah, maybe. I said I like some of it, honestly, even though it is kind of watered down. Like
it's very alternative sounding in a period of time when alternative was changing dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because
I'll always be an alternative person. That's what I was.
95, 96.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too. That's probably it's definitely the first genre of music or subgenre of music that I, associated with.
Yeah. It's the first one that really meant something to me, besides like my parents' oldies when I was, really young.
Sure, yeah, me too.
A big Beach Boys fan.
Yeah, me too.
I got to see them in 1990.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
John Stamos was with them.
Really?
Yep. Funny. In 1990, I saw Beach Boys and New Kids on the Block. And that was the absolute height of New Kids on the Block fame. That was their step-by-step tour, the one where they went to huge stadiums.
Yeah.
I saw them in Ottawa. I don't remember any of the songs. All I remember is like beforehand, there was a big delay because it was like raining. It was summer, but it was a cold, rainy, gross night, and there was a big delay with the equipment because the stage was so wet. So like the techs were out there working and stuff, and all I can remember is that while the techs were working, some of the members of the band, not all of them, 2 or 3 of them, came out to like just see the crowd, and they were really showing off. Like there was a part where there was like a rail, and they were jumping up on the rail and stuff. It was really dangerous and stupid, but I mean, I understand why they were doing it. These are these teenage guys that are like kings of the world at the time,
trying to entertain the fans.
Yeah, and all the girls are going and stuff like that. All I can really remember they sold like glow stick type things, but they were bendy. They were green. And of course, this being 1990, I think it's neon. Hot pink and green stuff.
Sure.
And they were selling these bendy neon glow stick things. And I remember a girl had bent hers into her heart, was going, "I love you, Donnie. I love you, Donnie." And I'm thinking, wow, look at Donnie now.
Yeah, look at Donnie now. Donnie's making burgers. They have that burger chain now.
That family's an empire, though. They know how to run. They know how to run their brand. Give them credit.
Hey,
they make a lot of money.
Big time.
Oh, he's fucking loaded. So I didn't see it, but Ryan told me once he was watching that show, and it was one of the times, like, Mark isn't usually on the show, right? But it was the one where he showed up, and they were, trying to show how Boston they were, of course. So they were in, like, some, I don't know, shitty part of Boston at a basketball court, shooting hoops and stuff like that. And Ryan said at one point, like, Mark said, "Let's make things interesting to make a bet." And he just takes out, like, a brick of money, like, from his, like, pants. Like, it's like a stack like this big of money that's like probably like 100. So he's just carrying around like a brick of it, and he like puts it down, like, and they're gonna play for that or something. Like, you just carry that around, dude.
It's not smart.
No. Well, I mean, it looks badass, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you was, Westworld season 2 seems to be getting pretty terrible reviews.
Well, all I hear, and the same thing from my mother, is it's confusing. You can't tell what's going on anymore. Like, so I don't know. I will watch it. I'm still interested. I really did like the first season, and maybe I can follow it better than some people. I'm pretty good at following stuff. I don't know, but
I've just wondered if I even want to invest the time in it because I was kind of fading at the end of the first season.
yeah, I really liked the first season. I liked all of it.
No. I don't know. Well, if you do watch it, let me know what you think.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot of things that I need to catch up on that I've just kind of given up on.
Yeah.
For the current time.
Another thing that's kind of cool about Fellini is that he was actually a big influence on one of my favorite filmmakers in Terry Gilliam. And in fact, there's quite a bit of Fellini style in one of my favorite movies ever, Brazil.
I was going to say, yeah, I can see it.
Basically, in fact, the way that he would describe Brazil is kind of, like a 1984 thing, but done by Fellini. And in fact, he said originally a title he was going to do for Brazil was going to call it 1984 and a half, because that way it would be like, it would pay tribute to 1984, but it would also be the half, like 8.5 by Fellini, which is kind of cool. But yeah, again, a big a lot of attention to detail in the mise-en-scene and stuff. You can see that in something like Brazil, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'm interested to see more Fellini movies. The only ones I've seen now are Casanova and 8.5. So I really want to see La Dolce Vita for sure, and La Strada sounds cool too. But yeah, his output in like the 50s would have been considered part of the neorealism movement. Which I guess I can talk a little about, just so people know what I mean when I say it. I think of what a good starting point is for it, because I haven't actually seen a lot of the movies. It's more things I've read than what I've actually seen. Although I have seen The Bicycle Thief, which mostly, when I think of that movie, I just think of it as almost sort of a minimalistic sort of style, I guess. But Italian neorealism, the main thing, and this is what you get from The Bicycle Thief, in spades, of course, is that it's kind of set amongst the working class or the poor. It's more of a focus on that. It's more of like everyday people. But another thing that made the style different and try to make it more realistic, and this is funny because everything can come back again when we talk about our New Hollywood, but one of the things we said when we did about New Hollywood and coming out of the French New Wave, blah, 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 one of the things that came right, one of the most striking things right away about the New Hollywood style as opposed to older Hollywood, was that you would get films that were grittier, more realistic, and then sometimes maybe we would say shot almost in a documentary style, street level. Italian neorealism was sort of the first movement to really do that, and one of the things it did was they would use a lot of people that weren't even actors. They would just sort of try to use real people and non-professionals just to get, again, another level of realism into things. And of course, this being right after World War II and Italy being on the losing side of World War II, a harsh economic backdrop is a big part of it too and stuff. So as we can say, now that we're at Casanova, is a complete departure from any of that. This is a flashy 2.5 hour long period piece full of magic realism and, basically, again, almost the antithesis, not antithesis, well, almost the opposite of the neorealism style that he originally came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking. It's very different
Mm-hmm.
than.
And really, when you're thinking of the only film he did that is considered really a staple of that is a film he did in 1957 called Nights of Cabiria, which is a drama he did about a prostitute in roaming in around Rome, trying to find a true love or something like that. and that's 57. So that ends, and that was right. That was coming on the heels of La Strada. Yeah, you're right. La Strada was actually his first big one. I said La Dolce Vita, but it was really La Strada. I guess La Dolce Vita was his first big one, kind of internationally. But La Strada was sort of his one that made him sort of popular, at least within Italy. And La Strada also is often placed on best films of all times. The British Film Institute does a top 10 every 16 or 8 years or something like that. It's been on there at least once. Speaking of these lists, I only recently found out that there's a similar list for best Canadian films, which I didn't even know about, and they've done that about every 10 years or so, and it made me think that in the future we'll have to do a couple Canadian films just for the hell of it.
Yeah,
just because they're kind of a unique thing. Like nowadays, it's almost impossible to make a truly Canadian film because we're so integrated with the United States now. But at least the 60s up to the 90s, it was possible to make a truly Canadian film. And I was thinking about that because I just rewatched one of my favorite films, The Sweet Hereafter. It is a really great film and one of my very favorites. Of course, it stars Sarah Polley, but it has more going for that. It's by Canadian director. You haven't seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I watched it when you told me about it.
Yeah, Adam Egoyan. Really interesting role for Ian Holm. And people asked Ian Holm, how he wound up in this, Canadian film and stuff like that. He said, well, there's actually not too many films that have a leading role part for a 65-year-old man, but this did. So I thought that was good. But yeah, it's a really good movie and very Canadian. Like it absolutely, even though it's out west, which is, very far from me, it still has a very Canadian feel. It felt like it could happen here too. It's set in British Columbia, but a lot of it feels like here too. But Adam Egoyan, whatever you say. But yeah, that film has been on the list at least once, The Sweet Hereafter. But one I think maybe we should watch is Jesus of Montreal, which is a very interesting film. But yeah, as I said, at least when it comes to great Canadian films, they're all sober and depressing.
Yeah, I know that's what you've always told me.
I mean, Canada is known for being like a lighthearted country full of people with good sense of humor that don't take themselves seriously. We've actually produced a lot of famous comedians despite having a small population. And yet our film industry, and a lot of our novels too, are super depressing subject matter. As we said, The Sweet Hereafter is actually based on a book which is American. It's an American book which is loosely based on something that happened in real life. It's somewhere in America, Texas or something like that. But to make a movie, it had to be Canadian. It took Canadians to do the proper movie of it. Jesus of Montreal isn't actually as depressing. It's somber, but it's not depressing. It's not like but yeah, The Sweet Hereafter is super depressing.
Yeah, it is.
I really love it. And actually, recently, one of her movies that she directed herself has been on, I think, the latest list.
Sarah Polley?
Yeah, sorry. The one about her family. It's actually...
I was just looking at that. Stories We Tell?
Yeah, Stories We Tell.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to gush about her, but as people know, I love her not just as an actress, but as a director, creator, and just human being. I just have a lot of respect for her, and I admire her in a lot of ways. Probably I've always heard that before.
No, she's just not doing a whole lot anymore is the problem.
No. Well, I mean, she picks and chooses, is how it goes.
I mean, it's acting or directing. 2012 was that.
I don't know if I'd be able to find it. Okay, so there's a 2015 list, a 2004 list, a 93 list, and an 84 list. Those are the lists so far they've made of greatest Canadian films. And one that's on, and there's only a couple that are on all four. And one is a fairly old film and considered the first great Canadian film. It's a film from 1970 called Going Down the Road. I'd really like to see that if it's possible, because it hits close to home, because it's the story of two guys from my native Cape Breton who go to Toronto to try to get better jobs, which is almost as true now as it was then. People from my part of the world, specifically Cape Breton, going out west for better lives, that's still, to this day, an ongoing thing. So I'll always be interested in seeing that movie. There's not too many movies that are about Cape Bretoners, and this movie's not in Cape Breton. They leave, but yeah. Bless you. But the other movie that's always on the list is a French movie called Mon Oncle Antoine, or My Uncle Antoine, as I'm sure you could probably figure out, which is a very important Quebecois story, which I'd like to see sometime too, because that's another piece of history not a lot of people know about, which was about how Quebec changed so much after World War II and sort of started to get its own identity. It's funny, you know, how sometimes when you have these cultural revolutions in areas and stuff, like in China and stuff, they have the names. Do you know what the name of the revolution in Quebec was called? The Quiet Revolution. Isn't that so Canadian? But it was actually quite intense. Even to a point where you had like terrorist bombers running around the 70s, and the Prime Minister, Trudeau's daddy, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, enacting martial law and everything. He was an arrogant son of a bitch, but he was tough. I know a lot of people don't like the new Trudeau because they think he's got his dad's arrogance and just does whatever the hell he wants. I don't know. I don't think he's quite that bad. I mean, again, I didn't live at the time of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, but I mean, Trudeau was the original Trudeau was a maverick. I mean, people throw that around in politics. Oh, he's a maverick, but he was. Yeah. He did what the fuck he wanted and stuff, and he was a rock star. Like I said, he was basically like our JFK in a lot of ways. You know, his wife was super hot. She used to hang out with the Rolling Stones, and Margaret Trudeau.
Wow.
And some of that blowback recently hit Justin, especially whenever he got criticized specifically by Americans, because a year or two ago when Fidel Castro died, Justin Trudeau sent out a tweet sending his condolences and saying didn't call him like a great man or anything like that, but he said something fairly positive, and then a bunch of people flipped out about it, particularly a lot of Americans and people that have had to live under things that Castro had done and stuff. But I mean, I get it though. Trudeau knew him when he was a kid.
Really?
when he was a kid. Oh yeah, Castro didn't go to the U.S., but he came to Canada.
Okay.
So yeah, several times Castro stayed at the same house as him when he was a kid. So he knew him as a kid. So I kind of get that. Anyway, my point was Mon Oncle Antoine's. It's one of the movies that's on all four lists and is always considered one of the best.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I've got pulled up here. I was making sure I had it right.
Yeah, so I'd like to see that sometime. It's about a 15-year-old boy. It's kind of a coming-of-age story. Sounds pretty cool.
Add that to my list.
So yeah, sometime down the road, we'll do a focus. We'll do maybe 2 or 3 Canadian films, because that'll be kind of cool. Educational for me, too, because, I actually haven't seen too many. They're hard to find. In a lot of ways. That's why when The Sweet Hereafter came on that channel, I jumped on taping it, because I hadn't seen it in a while.
That had a Criterion release.
Yeah, I'll have to get that. Totally worth owning to me. Really good performances. Sarah Pauli, Ian Holm, and cool, well-crafted story. Plus, it has, not only does it have Courage by the Tragically Hip, but it has a weird, slowed down version of it sung by Sarah Pauli. I mean, how cool is that? That is actually her.
That must be the soundtrack credit she's got.
Yeah. They play it at a couple times in the movie, and it's what they play at the end credits. So yeah, Courage is a great song. That's my sister's favorite song with the Tragically Hip. And Courage, actually, the full title is Courage, and then in parentheses, for Hugh MacLennan. Hugh MacLennan was an author from Cape Breton. So that's kind of cool. There's a video I remember. I remember that music video. In it, Gord Downey, the recently deceased singer of Tragically Hip, he's wearing a Boston Bruins shirt. Courage couldn't come at a worse time. And actually, what's funny is only on the 2004 list, they have Dead Ringers. So that's the only time that Cronenberg's on the list.
Wow, and it's Dead Ringers made the list? Wow.
Yeah. That seems like an odd thing, doesn't it? That seems like a really odd choice.
That is my favorite film of his, but that is an odd choice because it's not one he's really well known for.
It's your favorite? Oh. We should do it then if it's your favorite.
Yeah, Dead Ringers is my favorite. It's odd because it's not like as body horror as a lot of his other stuff. Yeah,
and it's not as messed up and out there and stuff. But no, it has something that really does grab you. And you have to give a lot of credit, of course, to
Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, Jeremy Irons playing dual roles in it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of his best performances.
Yeah. It's another one of those actors who is capable of being really good, but has done so many bad movies.
Yeah. He was in that Time Machine remake as one of the Morlock.
Yeah, I don't mind that, actually.
He does a good job, though, I think. And,
yeah.
I mean, he did a good Alfred. That was one of the good things in that movie. Didn't you think? Did you not like his Alfred?
No.
Okay. I just like Jeremy Irons so much.
I didn't like that weird, almost low-class grease monkey Alfred. He didn't seem to be He didn't seem to have the class and dignity and air of Alfred, the refiner. The refinement. He didn't have the refinement.
Sure.
No, I didn't like that. I mean, there's things I disliked way more about that movie, obviously. He's pretty low on the list, but no, I didn't like that either. I don't know if there's anything I like about it, man. I mean, I guess Gal Gadot's a good Wonder Woman.
Is she? Okay.
Hey, you know about the new Wonder Woman movie?
Yeah, I knew they were making it. I haven't heard about it.
It's set in 1984. Isn't that weird? So you got like a Wonder Woman movie and a Transformers movie, both like set in the mid 80s coming out. It's kind of cool.
Wonder why that's the case. It actually sounds more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Then
because again, it would be before Superman or Batman or anybody shows up.
See, I haven't seen Justice League, so I'm kind of in the dark on some of that stuff.
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, okay.
I want to. I mean, I wasn't going to see it in theater, obviously. I wasn't going to put myself through that after putting myself through Batman and Superman, which fans of the Sausage Factory paid for my ticket. I never forget.
I've got bigger fish to fry before I get to that.
Yeah. I've got a couple good movies on the horizon that I'm in a position to watch. As I said, just the other day on TV, they showed Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, so I managed to watch all of Dawn, because I hadn't seen it years ago. Remembered how good it was, and I'd forgotten. And then, as I said, a few months ago, when I finally got to see War was awesome. So I really hope there's another movie, because I think they're really good. Like Rise is okay. I mean, it sets things up nicely. There's nothing too great about it, but I think Dawn and then War, great.
Yeah.
Really happy with them. But and you know what? Maybe because I've been reading the comic or something, but that the movie they did of shit, why can't I think of anything's name anymore? And the Thousand Planets. Anyway, the sci-fi thing.
Not Valerian.
Yeah, Valerian. Yeah, Valerian Thousand Planets. I'm gonna watch that again. It's kind of growing on me. The movie. It's certainly worth seeing. It is visually spectacular, and it has a lot of good imagination. The main problem is the two leads, the people that play Valerian and Laureline. They're not very. I don't know. I don't find them that likable. But I think I'm going to watch the movie again because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I bought one part of the comic. I'm going to get more soon. Well, it's a really likable comic, so it makes me like the movie more.
This was a pretty big flop, wasn't it?
I figure it must have been. It must have cost a goddamn fortune to make.
Yeah, Luc Besson.
Yeah. I liked it, though. It's growing on me. I'm going to watch it again soon.
It's kind of one that was under the radar. I know I've had an opportunity to watch it, and I never did. So
I would recommend it. Because you'll at least like, again, the visuals, and I think you can at least appreciate the amount of imagination. There's a lot of imaginative stuff going on. in the end, the story's nothing to write home about, and I had a problem with the two leads. So maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I found the guy kind of smug. Yeah, I mean, I get that's part of his character, and the girl bland, but I don't know.
Okay, she was Enchantress. Suicide Squad.
Oh, no, there's no way you can tell that in this. Completely different. In this, she's just a cute blonde girl. That's, as we said, and we had to find out. Back when I was watching previews for it, I thought both actors were way younger. They both look so young, but she's like, I think about 27 or 28, and he's
really
like,
wow,
and he's like 35.
Wow, that dude is 35.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's like me.
He looks like a little boy.
I know. Like when I saw the previews, I was like, they both look like 14-year-olds.
Oh yeah, I know that kid. He was in. Oh shit, he was in the Cure for Wellness.
That's a movie that's on my Netflix list that I keep not watching.
Yeah, Kill Your Darlings, Devil's Knot.
Yeah, I saw Devil's Knot.
Yeah, he's done a lot of
stuff. Which is really, oddly enough, is directed by Atom Echoyan. Did you know that he directed that?
No.
Isn't that a weird thing for him to direct? Director of The Sweet Hereafter.
Yeah.
But yeah, he directed that.
Sure is. But yeah, that was a kind of a flop too. The Cure for Wellness.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected much. It's sort of a different, it's not really like a popcorn type of movie, is it?
No. It's pretty good though, I think.
I am gonna watch it. It's on my Netflix.
Yeah, this guy's not too much younger than you.
Yeah.
Born in 86.
Okay, it's 86. I thought, okay, there's 35. Yeah, so over 30 anyway, which is still pretty surprising because he looks like he's like 21 or something. But
see, that's where we are now. We're like, they're just 30. They're not that old.
That's what I have to say.
That's what we are now. Before, man, we were. Oh shit, she's 30. Oh god. Ugh. Hang her up. It's over.
She's on her way out.
It's cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. I'm sure that'll be on streaming somewhere. But I think I'm going to go check out Solo here in just a minute.
Oh, okay. Yeah. As I said, it is worth seeing. I was pretty bored for the first half, but I think it gets better. I think it does get better.
2 hours, 15 minutes. It's kind of long.
I didn't like the first hour or so. I was just like, I was not engaged. Didn't even really feel like Star Wars. It does sort of click in and then get to a point. And most of the stuff that happens anyway, even though you haven't seen it yet. And as I said, I think most people really like this guy as Han. I'm just impossible to please, I guess, because I don't.
Yeah, some big shoes to fill, especially for you.
But as I said, it's not like he doesn't try. He really paid attention because he does like the body language and everything, And I know I'm weird. And maybe other people don't notice this, but to me, it's very clear how much shorter he and Lando both are than that they would be later.
Maybe they did that on purpose, because I'm sure they casted Han first. They're like, well, Lando's got to be relatively.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe not. But, I mean, that would make sense because.
In a way, it makes sense, but then you think of just how hot what's-his-name has been.
Yeah, I know.
He was going to get it anyway.
Donald Glover.
Can't do anybody's names tonight. My God, I can't do any names. Donald Glover. This is why we need Rambo Raff on this show because he can always remember the names. I can't.
He's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah, I mean, I think of myself as an encyclopedia for a lot of things, but I blank on names constantly. But we can about wrap up here. I'm just trying to think of some other remarks, I suppose, on Fellini himself.
Yeah, I really just didn't want to trash the movie, but I wasn't into it. It wasn't for me.
No, I mean, I think it's kind of a waste of Casanova. I think Casanova is a really good, fascinating character, and this just seemed like he just had a really personal vendetta to make him seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
kind of a waste of everything. I mean, good
yeah,
actors, good director, great costume design, great set design, but it's just not a very good story that they're telling, or a very compelling story.
right. So I mean, at this point, he's getting into sexuality and uh, sometimes dreaming stuff too in his later stuff. But I'm just trying to think what else there's to say about this period. But I haven't seen the other movies, of course. I've seen pieces of Roma, which isn't really much of a movie. It's just sort of like a bunch of kind of just like a collection of stuff. I taped that off of TCM once, Roma, and watched a little bit of it, but I got bored because it's not like a focused movie. It's just sort of a bunch of just a bunch of stuff thrown together. It's like a collage of stuff. It's supposed to be like about his sort of impression of Rome, I guess. Let's say. But I don't know. Like I said, I mean, certainly Fellini did stuff that probably would appeal to us more than the movie we picked. We don't want to give people the impression Fellini's no good or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about him that I do admire, even if it doesn't necessarily come through in this film. I had a good quote by him. Hold on, let's see if I find it. That I think it's a cool quote because it sounds just so much like something a filmmaker would say. Let me find it again. I was actually going to say it way earlier, and then of course I got off course there. But oh yeah, for one thing, this not only does this sound like an artist, but again, this is very Italian thing to say, and this is there is no end, there is no beginning, there is only the infinite passion for life. And I have a quote by an author who wrote a book on Fellini called His Life and Work. An author named Tullio Ketch, who said, "The imagination of a man like Fellini is so extraordinary that it seems more real than reality itself." Pretty cool. But again, it's not as prevalent in a movie like this, which we said seemed like a very sort of personal kind of project for his, where he really felt like it was his need to tear down Casanova's legend or something like that. I don't know. I still did enjoy the movie for its weirdness and it's how offbeat it was, and I did get a kick out of the performance by Sutherland. But as you said, it doesn't have anything like a story that's really cohesive to grab onto to make you really invested in it and stuff. So yeah, I can get like how it's not necessarily like the most interesting thing. It's most interesting sort of from a design standpoint, and it's most interesting from if you know enough about Casanova to see how fucking different it is from what Casanova has regularly been described and portrayed as. Those are really its most interesting aspects. So anyway, we will say arrivederci there, and it's the only Italian. I broke my promise, but I wasn't even going for the accent. You can't do an Italian accent without sounding like you're just making fun of people anyway. Hey, spaghetti, yeah. You know. Like, that doesn't sound very respectful. I can't help it. You're a ridiculous people, and that's how you talk. Shut up. But we're going to finish this series with a trip back to Japan with another Japanese filmmaker, Yasuhiro Ozu. So we'll let you know in the coming week which of his films we picked. As I said, just to properly prepare people, prepare yourself for a black and white drama about ordinary, everyday people. No car chases, no explosions, no special effects. But I really enjoy his work. I can't help it. I just think he's one of the best filmmakers out there, and I think he gets overlooked a lot and stuff. Even when you're looking at Japan, of course, he'll get overshadowed by Kurosawa, who we did. And that will finish the series. And as we said, that doesn't mean we'll never do other stuff like this again in the future, or even some other different films by some of these filmmakers, because these filmmakers are so good. But we just wanted to hop around and go sort of from country to country and guy to guy and do some of the most again famous, acclaimed filmmakers. It got a bit longer because there were a few weeks where we had to miss, which is mostly my fault. But we'll get going again as the summer goes on. And yeah, as we said, we'll just get into different stuff. We won't do another series for a while. We'll just do some random episodes. And as we said, maybe some horror for fun, do some more lighthearted fun in the in the spirit of summer, and we have some ideas going down the road, some Canadian films and stuff. So there's always so much stuff to do. We're not going to run out of ideas and stuff. But yeah, so this series dragged out a bit more than we meant it to, but I hope you guys still are getting something out of it. It certainly helps us. I think it's good because it gives me an excuse to check out some of these directors. Like sometimes when I'm putting them off, and then again, in the case of somebody like Fellini, I've barely seen any of their work. But anyway, we'll be more on the ball this time. Give you a better heads up of what film by Ozu we pick next week. I've got it down to about 4 or 5 that I think would be most suitable. Part of me wants to really do one that I haven't seen before, but I don't know. That could backfire horribly, so I'm not sure. So maybe just on my own, I might watch 2 or 3 more this week. I certainly should be able to find time for it. I finally, after, I don't know, being kind of inconsistent in April and May and stuff, the last few weeks I've been able to watch a lot of movies. So I think I'm in a better position to watch more movies now. I mean, I always get distracted by other things, of course, video games and comics and books and stuff too, but, you know, I'm in a movie mode, enjoying it, so we'll figure it out. So we'll let you know going forward what we decide on that. So anyway, thanks a lot for being with us, guys. We will definitely be here next week, if not Tuesday, within the week, I'm sure. We won't miss another full week. More on the ball now, I think, you know, barring some really weird, unforeseen emergency type thing. Although it wasn't planned originally, I might have to wind up in Sydney in a couple of weeks, but that won't stop the show. I'll be able to do the show from there, I'm sure. So, because even though I'm going to be there, I don't anticipate being particularly busy while I'm there, unless again something changes. But anyway, that's we will let you know, as I've said like 10 times. You know that we will let you know. I know everybody's just super worried about what's going to happen. Don't worry, guys. The pocket dimension endures. So thanks again so much for being with us. We will see you very soon with a film by Yasuhiro Ozu to conclude the Masters of Film series, and then beyond, who knows? Lots of fun stuff. Stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See ya. Peace out.